What is up, everybody? Skratch coming up with another Raid Shadow Legends video. We're a bit late with today's video, apologies for that. Plarium released yesterday all the news about the new dungeon, the new boss, the Iron Twins. This is going to be the dungeon that kind of like deals with the awakening system. Now, whenever we have a new dungeon coming to the game or new content, we have new mechanics. We have a new boss that kind of like does everything different if we compare it with any other boss in the game. That means that we have to look at different champions, different teams in order to tackle this monster. If you guys noticed it, this dungeon will actually have different affinities, okay? So every single day the affinity is gonna change. It's gonna be very similar with the rest of the keeps. Plus, it's gonna work a bit differently. Decreased speed is gonna be mandatory on the boss if we wanna have a decent team. Having a cleanser, block debuffs, high resistance, that can work pretty well as well. It's kind of like a must. Or having maybe unkillable block damage. Now, we haven't seen all the passives on the boss. We're still missing a couple of things that we don't really know. Probably are the passives that are saying that he's immune to thermometer manipulation, enemy max HP kept on 10%, poison detonation kept on 10%, immune to increased cooldown skills, etc. That's probably what's gonna happen. Now, whenever we have a new boss, guys, we really need to find new champions that are kind of like having a value surge, a power surge. That usually happens every time they're bringing in new content, and this time around, it won't be different. Now, of course, I'm not really gonna talk about the most common champions. I'm not gonna talk about Duchess saying that she's gonna have a value surge, because that will be a bit irrelevant. She's always powerful for any content. We're going to talk about champions that are a bit more off the radar. Champions that I feel like will definitely be putting in some work on this dungeon. One thing that I want to mention before, we are not 100% how powerful this boss will be, how challenging will be. Is it going to be something similar with the normal dungeons that we have right now? Is it going to be taken to the next level and be similar with the Doom Tower boss or anything like that, kind of in terms of stats, accuracy, speed, resistance? That's kind of like what I mean, 300 plus or 200 plus. I feel like this is really important to consider, right? What sort of champions, what sort of teams we're gonna need in order to be the boss. So once we know that for sure, it's gonna be a bit easier to know, okay, we're gonna go with resistance, we're gonna need to have increased resistance, we're gonna need to have decreased accuracy, etc. These are things that are subject to change, so keep this in mind before you start building any of the champions that we're actually going to cover in today's video. Now let's move over with the champions, guys, right? That's pretty interesting. What champions are going to have a value surge? Let me start with some damage dealers, or let me just combine it all around. Basically, multi-hitter skills will have a damage reduction. They won't be dealing as much damage. Now, there are champions like Phoenix, Kendraphone, or other champions that conditionally place an extra hit. Depending on how this is coded, those champions might be viable, might not be as viable. It really depends on how they're doing their coding. They hit pretty hard with their A1s, right, with their basic skills, but they are doing an extra hit, so we're not sure how that's gonna play out. But my boy Septimus is coming back in play, guys. 100% Septimus is going to be very solid, especially for Spirit Affinity. We have enemy max HP, right? This is going to deal a 10% damage instantly on that boss, which is pretty freaking solid. The A1 hits pretty hard as well. We have a very nice passive attack aura for all battles. I feel like Septimus is definitely going to come in play in this dungeon. Most probably from here, guys, I feel like Cetalia could play a pretty nice role with her A2, the cleanse, the heal. I feel like that can be pretty powerful for Magic Affinity, considering that we don't have so many powerful champions for Magic Affinity, so many support champions, you know, let me kind of like rectify it. Hellier could be a very solid champion for Force Affinity with his cleanse skill, transferring the debuff, sorry, the shield. All around this can actually be pretty nice for your team. More of a support champion rather than a damage dealer. He has a resistance aura for all battles by 60. That's definitely gonna come in handy. Another champion from here that's gonna be very solid, and I don't really know if I can call it a value search for him, but Stagnite, okay? Decrease speed on the A1. Decrease speed is going to be mandatory on this boss. It doesn't matter what team you're running, okay? It really doesn't matter what team you're gonna run. Decrease speed is gonna be the #1 thing you're gonna wanna make sure you have on the team. Then we have decrease attack, defense down. Very, very important to have them on the team. I feel like Stagnite is pretty much ticking all the boxes for the Spirit Affinity. If we're gonna go over to the High Elves, now here we actually have a champion that is like, wow, Royal Huntsman. The A1 has a chance to put an increased attack on himself. We have defense down. We have an attack aura for all battles for Spirit Affinity, which is gonna be great for this dungeon. Then attacks one enemy, will ignore defense by 100%. Why does this even matter? Well, if you guys remember, the boss has skills that actually increase the stats on him. Increases the defense, then he's gonna increase the attack, but then again he's gonna increase the defense with another skill. So we wanna make sure we're lowering the defense on the boss and we ignore the defense to deal more damage. Plus this skill right here is a very powerful hit. I feel like Royal Huntsman could potentially be a very, very solid champion for the Spirit Affinity on this new dungeon. Of course, Royal Guard is gonna be very powerful, guys. I don't really have to mention that. Aitos could be pretty good with his A1. He deals tons of damage with that for the Void Affinity if we really need a different champion in there. We're not gonna be able to manipulate Termiter or anything like that. Maybe even Elena Reel could be pretty good. I'm not sure how it's gonna work with the poisons. If we can do a 10% from poison detonation, it might not be a bad option, honestly, but we gotta wait and see. From the Sacred Order, here we have tons and tons of champions, right? A lot of them, they're pretty good all around. If we're gonna play with unkillable block damage, Rochecart, Sir Nicholas, they could potentially come in play as key champions for this dungeon. Errol, he could be a potential champion to have on the list, guys. He hits pretty hard, it's easier to build, at least for the Force Affinity. And we have an increases ally attack in dungeons by 35% for his aura, which is pretty solid. Now, this skill right here is a triple hitter, but the other ones are actually pretty good, and it does deal a decent amount of damage. Now, from the Sacred Order, guys, we actually have one of the very few magic cleansers in the game, Sanguinia. On the A1, attacks 3 times. She's not a damage dealer, right? So we don't really care about how many hits she has. Places an immunity on all allies for 1 turn and a continuous heal on a 3-turn cooldown. And right here we actually transfer all the debuffs from this champion to the target. I feel like for the Magic Affinity, she's going to be very, very powerful because we don't really have many other cleansers for the Magic Affinity. We do have some legendaries, but epic-wise, we don't really have many options on the table. How I mentioned, Phoenix could potentially be a very solid champion. We're gonna have to wait and see how that is actually coded and how exactly it's gonna play out, you know. If we're gonna have a quick look at the Barbarians, we have quite a few champions in here as well. Now, luckily, we're gonna have decreased speed pretty much for every single affinity, kind of like for free, right? We're getting tons of champions. Seal of the Drakes, decreased speed on the A1. She's gonna be pretty solid here. We're gonna have the heal, the revive, all the good stuff that she brings to the team. But we're gonna have another champion, and that's Yakarl. Because he has a decreased speed on Void Affinity, 100% chance to land it right here, which is definitely gonna play a very, very important role. He can deal some solid damage with this skill as well. All around, we have a pretty good kit from Yakarl, and I feel like the timing is actually amazing, right? The timing that we're actually getting this champion with a new dungeon coming out, it almost feels perfect, you know? So I feel like Yakarl can definitely be pretty solid. Rough Matab. This is mainly for accounts that maybe don't have Unkillable, if we're going to be able to play Unkillable, and they don't have crazy gear, and they're struggling to get the resistance. Now, this champion buffs resistance, reflect damage. We have a resistance aura for all battles by 60. He's going to be the right champion for your team to give you the resistance, you know, kind of like to keep your team in line. It really depends on what sort of account you have, how advanced you are in the game, you know. But I feel like he could potentially be a pretty decent option out there, you know. High Katoon, she decreases speed as well with A1. She's a free champion and increases the speed. She's pretty good all around. She has a speed aura for all battles. If you're not gonna use increased speed, champions that increase the duration of buffs could potentially be good in there, but I don't see why you would want to put yourself through that misery when you can actually use champions that constantly decrease the speed and that will keep you safe. Skytech Shaman, a good option. The only problem is her passive, so I wouldn't really recommend her. Even though she's a nice champion, I feel like for a longer fight, her passive is kind of like gonna sabotage your entire team, and that's gonna be a problem. Man-Eater, I don't really need to say it. He's gonna be pretty freaking powerful there as well. If we're gonna be able to run Unkillable, he does have the decreased attack as well. He hits pretty hard, immunity. Ugo, again, can be a decent champion with the cleanse, defense down, leech. She can definitely help us in there. Right here, we have Skratch. I feel like he might be one of the best options for the Void Affinity if you don't have all the crazy legendaries, because he gives you block debuffs, cleanse, a shield. We have decreased speed on the A1, so he ticks so many boxes. Decreased speed, cleanse, block debuffs, we get shield. It does have a chance to remove a random buff from each enemy if we're gonna get to anything like that. He has a pretty nice passive. Resistance aura for all battles by 40. I feel like Skratch is gonna be the GOAT. Definitely a very, very solid champion for this. If we're gonna move over from here to the Skinwalkers, here as well, we have Hackern. He is probably the only legendary that has a block debuffs and cleanse for a magic affinity, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. We have a few solid champions in here. I feel like ally attack will be pretty good to deal tons of damage, you know. That's kind of like pretty standard. It works on most of the things. If we're gonna have a quick look at the orcs, here as well we have quite a few champions. Growhack can be decent for decreased speed. We cannot manipulate the thermometer, so that's a bit of a problem. But that decreased speed can be pretty good from his A1 if you don't have other options to put on the table. Dark the Pierce, decreased attack, defense down, that can be pretty good as well. Moving over to the next faction, guys, we have the Demon Spawns. Now, again, another free champion. We have Tainix Hateflower right here, guys. Decreased speed, free champion. We get a bit of a heal as well, so this can be pretty good as another option on the table. From the Undead, I feel like Massalia Mage is definitely going to come out in play. Again, if you don't have any other crazier cleansers from this affinity, like legendary ones or stuff like that. We have immunity, we have quite a few buffs, increased defense, increased crit rate. We have decreased speed on the A1, which is very nice. We have a heal. Massalia Mage, I feel like he's definitely ticking quite a few boxes on this boss, and I feel like he's going to be pretty freaking powerful there as well. From here, we're actually going to have a few legendaries as well, man. I feel like Bloodgorge could be potentially a good champion in terms of damage with his A3, ignores defense. Now, how you've seen, the defense actually ramps up on the boss. I'm not sure how hard it's going to be to kill it, but if it's going to be quite hard to kill it, we definitely need to have champions that ignore defense, because if he's going to get to use specific skills very often, it's going to increase his defense by a lot, and it's going to be very hard to knock that down, you know. It's really important to see how hard they're actually making the boss, but I'm very curious to see. Saito could potentially be pretty good, you know. Attacks one enemy, we have defense down in there. This skill right here can be pretty good. His passive, I like the passive, how it ignores the defense. The A3 is pretty good as well. Attack aura for all dungeons by 30%. So that's a pretty good option. Of course, I don't have to tell you guys, Sifi, Nakret, these crazy champions, they're gonna be good in there. But I feel like it's literally no point in me mentioning that, because all of you guys already know that. If we're gonna have a look at the Dark Elves, Blind Seer could potentially be a good champion, just to give you that immunity if you really need it, if you don't have other options on the table. Dark Kale to detonate poisons, detonate the HP, you know, similar with Theodore, that could be a very decent option as well. Mitrala is gonna be solid. V6 for Void Affinity again, she can be pretty good to keep your team alive. We do have decreased speed from her. The aura doesn't really help us. The shield could be pretty good as well. But V6, I feel like she can definitely be a decent option, you know, at least to keep in mind. From the Night Revenants, Here we have some very, very solid champions again. Faceless could potentially be one of them. Ignores shield, block damage, and defense. He hits pretty hard with that skill. Single hits on each one of them. Attack aura only for arena battle, so that doesn't really help us. But just ignoring the defense and bringing damage, he could potentially be pretty important for what we're doing, you know. Of course, I mentioned Theodore. He's a very, very solid champion. Mother Sibel, again, sorry, because I clicked on escape. She was a fusion. She does have decreased speed on this skill. We have increased defense, revive on that, a bit of a heal, speed aura for all battles. She could potentially be very solid for the Force Affinity as a support champion. And I feel like we're going to need to have 2 champions for decreased speed. I think that's going to be pretty important to constantly keep that in case if somebody gets resisted or in case if somebody doesn't lands it, you know. From the dwarves, guys, Brogni, yes, counter in. Beauregard, right? This champion was the very first one that brings in increased resistance. And we have increased speed. The A1 has a chance to land the increased defense on himself. We're getting a bit of a shield, removes a random debuff from all allies. That can help a bit as well. So I feel like Beauregard is the same, kind of like the same. So I feel like Beauregard is in the same situation with Raf Matab. Depending on what sort of gear you have on your account, how solid is your account, it might come in play, it might not. It really depends on that. And of course, if the boss has like a gazillion accuracy or he doesn't. Geomancer probably is going to be an amazing damage dealer there because of his passive. That boss actually has quite a few AoE attacks, so multi-hits as well. I feel like Geomancer is just going to melt that boss. So definitely looking forward to try that out. But Geomancer is just good all around as a champion, guys. Not much to really say about this bad boy here, you know. From the Shadowkin, again, Ninja could be potentially good. Just for the HP burn, the way he kind of like detonates the HP burn in there. And just bring in like different sort of champions. We have Raiho, we have all these amazing champions that could potentially be pretty good in there. But that was all for this video, guys. Let me know in the comments down below. What are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen in this dungeon? You think they're going to make it super hard to complete? You think they're going to make it in between a normal dungeon and the Doom Tower bosses? Keep in mind, this should be a normal dungeon now because it's kind of like later content. They might make it a bit harder, a bit more challenging, you know? So all this is going to play a pretty important role in helping us to decide what sort of champions we're using, what teams we're using. The 2 passive that they weren't showcased in the video, I feel like they're just the classic ones that are pretty much making the boss immune to everything and stuff like that. Hopefully we're not going to have a surprise there because that's going to be unpleasant. But that was all for this video. Much love, appreciate all of you guys watching, and I'll catch you all soon in the next one. Peace.